Another positive day on the JSE today. They're a little bit more tentative than yesterday, and of course those gains taking a while to come through this morning.
Yes, we opened lower at the start of the day, and then slowly we started ticking up. I think obviously people taking a look at where the futures were opening, where the futures are trading on the S&P, and as they started to tick up, so we followed. But I think obviously that gold price moving up to 1,064, which was a new high, brought a little bit of interest back, and we saw some of the gold counters moving forward.
Of course, with those gold counters, while they've got the gold price at the new record dollar high, we had the rand strengthening to 736 this morning. So that's really kind of putting the brakes on any rally for the gold shares, isn't it?
Yes, and all resources really. So as that rand starts to strengthen, the companies are starting to battle to make those revenues, and they have to really get their costs down to get a rand price where they're still making good money on gold.
Well, what's your view on the gold price from here? Because we have seen it holding well above that $1,000 mark for quite a while now. In fact, it's been holding around 1,050 for quite a while. I mean, do you think it's going to sustain the gains that we have seen coming through?
Well, we are starting to see a trend where gold is seen as an asset class and not just as a store of value. So it is an asset class, and we've seen more people coming into it because of that. We're also seeing jewelry demand pick up, so that's also a good support for gold. And then secondly, obviously, the dollar is in a cyclical downturn. And as well, while that dollar is very weak and is going to stay weak for some time, I can't see the gold price really moving too much lower. 1,000 to 1,100 is probably now a new range, and it'll probably stay in that till the end of the year.
So for any more positive momentum for the gold counters, we really need to see the rand weakening from these levels. Do you think that's likely?
We saw when everything started happening last year, 2008, when the tumultuous time started in the financial markets. 15 billion rand came out of this SA bonds, and then to date in 2009 we've had 14 billion flow back in. So there's a really strong flow of money coming back into emerging markets and into South Africa, keeping that rand very strong. The gold price obviously keeping it strong as well, so there's not too much pushing the rand onto a weaker level, and I think maybe 750 is probably the weakest it'll get until the end of the year.
Well, just looking at those bonds, we know there has been some concern about the additional government paper that's likely to come onto the market. I mean, are we still seeing that foreign appetite continuing for our bonds, and how are yields responding to that?
Obviously, yields are slightly lower as money comes into those bonds, and the bond price looking relatively good. But the foreign flow seems still to be strong, and there's appetite still coming into emerging markets and into South Africa.
Yeah, not much news out on the local front today. We did have a trading statement from Cadiz. It expects its headline earnings per share for the 6 months to September to be 90 to 110% higher. And that shouldn't really be surprising, should it? Because it has been a very positive period on the markets, hasn't it?
Yes, obviously the market since March have picked up extensively. We're up 35% on some counters, and looking like we're going to carry on moving forward. So very good numbers from Cadiz, and obviously the market helping there. They also reduced costs nicely from their statement, and we'll just have to see where when they're trading, when their financials do come out, where those costs are, and if is it top line earnings that have come through, is it bottom line savings that they've brought through. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it looks like quite positive, 90 to 100% up there.
Also some news in the newspaper this morning about Sasol, that it fears it could get sanctions from the United States due to its dealings in Iran. I see the share price is up today 1%, 291 Rand 20, so the market doesn't really seem too concerned about that.
Not at the moment. I think obviously the oil price is what they're looking at first, and that's quite firm today. I think American companies do have sanctions on doing business with Iran, and if Sasol is seen as a multinational, they worry that being seen as a multinational, they'll also be restricted to trade. But at the moment, nothing coming through from the States to say whether they'll put foreign multinationals under those sanctions as well. So we'll just have to wait and see how that story pans out.
I mean, just looking at the United States at the moment, of course, this is a busy week for earnings. It really kicks off this week. We had the Dow 12-month high yesterday, flirting just below that $10,000 level. I mean, do you think that we could cross that and hit new levels if earnings do come out positive as expected?
Well, I think so. We went through on the Dow 9,800, which is a 12-month high. 9,800, which is a 12-month high. If we stay above that 12-month high of 9,800, we can definitely go through to 10,000. And once 10,000 breaks, there's not much resistance there, and we can see it all go up another 10% to 11,000. So the earnings coming through this week, I think we've got a lot of the banks coming through as well. We've got Google on Thursday. So if those are very positive, I think we've got a very good chance of staying above 9,800 and breaking through that 10,000 barrier.
Well, some news coming out here this afternoon is that Eskom is looking for 45% increase in tariffs for the next 3 years, well, for each of the next 3 years, otherwise a once-off 146% next year. Not very positive, I should imagine, for consumers or for business in South Africa.
Well, currently our manufacturing industry is under immense pressure. The mining industry is also under pressure, with electricity as well being a problem there. And it's not good numbers for an economy which is really lagging the world economy and really needs to get something to boost it going forward. So I think they're not great numbers. And it's also 45%, the following year will be 45% on 45 and then 45% on 90, so it's compounded. So it actually works out to be much more than that. So they're not good numbers for the economy as a whole, and I think it can lead to a lot of job losses.
And of course, something else the market is going to be looking for are any developments on the talks between the communications department and our cell phone operators. And of course, we know that the government is putting pressure on cell phone operators to cut those interconnect charges. I mean, what sort of impact is that going to have on those operators?
Well, obviously it depends on how big that cut is. I think if it's a marginal cut, it'll be good for everybody. I think it's a very drastic cut. It'll put pressure on infrastructure spend. A lot of the money that they get from that, the telecoms, they pump into new base stations in areas that don't have cell phone signal, and therefore it does help the economy creating new base stations, etc. So I think it's very careful of how big that cut's going to be. I think a marginal cut will be good for everybody, but a very drastic cut will put pressure on all of those companies.